Hello, welcome back my little book dweebs to another video on obviously my YouTube channel. So I did a video a while back or like last month, I don't know when it was. There was basically 6 books that I found shockingly good. And these are books that essentially I went into with either little expectation and was blown away by, or books that I think received hype and shocked me at how good they genuinely then were, because you do have this thing online where people are like, oh, it's amazing. And then it's somebody that you think, yeah, I respect your opinion. And you think, yeah, but do I respect this other person's opinion, and is this a different opinion, and then are they actually good? And yeah, you get what I mean. Therefore, I did 6 books that shocked me. I've got 5 more books here with me today that shocked me with how good these are. So this is different from me just saying this book is good, because sometimes you go into a book knowing everybody has said it's good. It's got good Goodreads rating, it's got good Storygraph rating, it's got good Amazon reviews, people have raved about it, like actual critical professionals, as well as everybody you see on social media, so you know they're good. These are books that necessarily I went into blind. I didn't know if they had good reviews, or one person said read it, or maybe I was reading half of it and I thought, no, this isn't good, and then all of a sudden I'm like, bam, okay, this might be one of my favorite books of the year. That's what these books are. Let's get into them. Hopefully this video gives you some idea on some more books you can pick up, because at the end of the day, it's a new year. We want more books to be reading, because that's the best thing about the new year. Okay, so the first book is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Now, this was a book that was very kindly sent to me by somebody over on Instagram who essentially said, this is one of my favorite books of all time. Can you review it? I want to hear your points on it. Now, the reason this shocked me is a very simple factor. For about the first third of the book, I thought, I don't get what the hype is here. It's just a cowboy book. It's just about people walking across the American country back in whenever cowboys are around 1860, something like that. And they're not particularly happy people. One of them's actually quite obnoxiously dislikable. And then, yeah, it basically just picks up and absolutely blows my mind for the final 2/3. Essentially, as I said, what we've got here is a story of a group of cowboys, to be calling them short, or people from the Wild West America, or some lonesome part of America. They essentially live in the bottom level of squalor. They decide to go off and travel and go somewhere different, and basically the whole story tells of them traveling, of them arriving, of the people they meet, of the journey they take, both physically and also mentally and also personality-wise with one another. It's all absolutely brilliant, and it really blew my mind, as I said, from about halfway in, or about a third of the way in, where these characters that I actively disliked, there were people in here where I was like, you annoy me. The way you speak to people, the way you are, really annoys me. So when all of a sudden it flipped and this person said something emotional, this person apologized, this person changed because of somebody that entered into the story, I thought, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. This is actually a hurt person. This is actually somebody who is unhappy with their own life and therefore makes out to be a very unlikable person. And I really liked that. And that was when this book really ramped up. So I'd have said this was probably a 3 out of 5 for me for the first 100 pages or so. I was like, I don't get it. It's just a generic cowboy story. I've not read a cowboy story, so I wasn't overly interested in the idea of it. They weren't set in like a big town where there was bustling characters. It was set very much on these focused individuals and their stories. Yes, the dialogue was good. Yes, it felt like I was involved in this story and this kind of, yeah, okay, I can understand why we're here doing this and who these people are, but it just wasn't that interesting until, as I said, the characters started to pop off, and then the action started to pop off as well. So you've got people who have been in the book, and it's long, so I just need to say it's long. This is a book that's over 800 pages long. So you get embedded in the story of these people. You start thinking, okay, these are people like my friends. I can understand these people. And then all of a sudden, one gets very much in danger. Someone may die. These sort of things happen. You think, holy crap, okay, I'm a lot more invested in these people than I thought I was. And the stories that go on, there's love, there's hate, there's crime, there's redemption, there's people failing other people, there's everything. Everything is in this book. This is one of the most complete stories I've ever read in terms of if you had to tick what you wanted in a book, you had it. I mean, there's no fancy sci-fi, that sort of thing, but I just mean in terms of if you want to cover topics, you could probably cover them in this. So that's Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry, the first book on this list of 5 of books that genuinely shocked me with how good they ended up being. The next book is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, Taylor Jenkins Reid is an author I have a lot of respect for. Pretty much every one of her books I like. She has this ability to write about fictional kind of celebrities and their stories, essentially their claim to fame, or the reason that they're popular, or the kind of background behind everything, that sort of thing. Daisy Jones and the Six focuses on the story of Daisy Jones and the Six, which is a band. Originally the band was the Six, and then Daisy Jones joined to try and make them even more popular. They then become one of the most popular bands in the world, but there's drama going on in the background. There's a relationship that shouldn't be going on in the background. There's, you know, bad things happening to these people, and that's the drama that happens. Now, the reason that I was shocked is because I've read Taylor Jenkins Reid books before. I have enjoyed a lot of her books. I've read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I've read Carrie Soto is Back, these sort of things. The thing that really shocked me with Daisy Jones and the Six was the audiobook. Now, the book story itself was very impressive. Loved it. I love the idea. Basically, they interview them. So the story is told via interviews of the people like 10 years after the band have broken up and what happened and all this sort of stuff. But also the audiobook, there's actual like songs and there's music and things like this in it as well. Every single character is narrated by a different person. So it genuinely feels like you're listening to just an interview of a band that were around in like I think it's meant to be like the 70s, 80s, that sort of thing. So it feels genuine. There was nothing about this book where I thought, no, you've kind of lost me. That's lost me. Now, apparently this is based very loosely on a band of the time, and anybody I think who knows of that band, I think they're around in like the 70s, 80s, goes, oh, this sounds very much like them. Basically, it's kind of loosely based on that idea, but I think you could kind of say that about anything. If you started just writing a generic book about a band from the 70s, 80s who suffered with drugs and romance and cheating and all this sort of drama, that's probably how most bands were in the 70s, 80s. Most rock bands / guitar-based drum band group people anyway. That surprised me, absolutely loved it, thought it was fantastic, and that's the shocking thing, is just how impressive the audiobook was. There was no reason for them to go that hard. There was no reason to get a completely different character or cast member for every single character in the book. They could have just had one dude or woman doing different voices for each of them, but no. Very impressive. The TV show that then came out was really good as well, and they had original music that's different to the one in the audiobook, just different. I think obviously professional musicians kind of came in and said, okay, we've got the lyrics, you've got the general syntax that's going on here in the lyrics, but we just wanted something a bit more, so that's what they've done with that. So that's fine. Brilliant, loved it. If you are looking for a book about bands in the 70s, check this out. If you've read any other Taylor Jenkins Reid as well, check this out. So that's the second book in my 5 books that shocked me, and still to this day I will recommend to people. The next book is 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. Now, Khaled Hosseini is probably most famous for The Kite Runner. Therefore, when I picked up 1,000 Splendid Suns, my naivety, I'd never heard of it. I didn't know it was a book. My dad said, you did The Kite Runner in English I think I did it at A-level, and you enjoyed that, so try reading this one. And I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. Now, the reason that this shocked me is one pure and simple reason. Yeah, that makes sense. The fact that it nearly made me cry. No book has ever got me anywhere close to crying. It's never made me intentionally kind of have to stop reading because I've just read a line that I thought, oh, cool, that's kind of hit a nerve or something like that. This did. This is a book that I'll read the blurb to give you a better understanding than me trying to explain it. Mariam is only 15 when she is sent to Kabul to marry Rashid. Nearly 2 decades later, a friendship grows between Mariam and a local teenager, Layla, as strong as the ties between mother and daughter. When the Taliban take over, life becomes a desperate struggle against starvation, brutality, and fear. Yet love can move a person to act in unexpected ways and lead them to overcome the most daunting obstacles with a startling heroism. Now, I don't want to ruin what actually happens in this book, and basically it's a very uncomfortable read. And nearly everything about this book is very uncomfortable. There is trigger warnings of abuse, trigger warnings of war, trigger warnings of all the isms that you could probably think of. It's a very dark book, and the bits that will make you emotional are the moments of light, the moments where you remember kind of love, you remember hope, these sort of things, and what Khaled Hosseini does to include those in this book. And that's the reason that this is on this list, because it shocked me with how much it made me, as I said, emotional. And I just don't get emotional with books. I specifically remember sitting in my garden, I think I was sunbathing, reading the book, and my partner was like, right, we need to leave soon. I was like, I just need to finish this bit. There's a bit that I'm just reading now. And I remember sitting there reading it thinking, holy crap, I do need to stop reading this. Not because I'm afraid of crying. I'm more than happy to cry. I'm not actually much of a cry, simply because I don't find any things that sad, but it was something that made me emotional, and I thought, okay, I don't want to be getting emotional just before I pop round to the in-laws, you know what I mean? That's why this book is on this list. 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. Khaled Hosseini. I feel like I'm saying it too quickly and therefore butchering it, but if you've not read this or The Kite Runner yet, you need to. They're wonderfully written, they're incredibly emotional, they're incredibly powerful, and they're cultural. So if you want somebody that maybe sticks to just stuff about America or the United Kingdom or somewhere you're comfortable with, reading something like this or The Kite Runner will really open up your minds as to how different cultures live, how lucky we possibly are to live where we are, not have war, not have poverty, not have famine, these sort of things. These books will open your eyes to that. It's such a good book. definitely give it a read. Next up is The Housemade by Freida McFadden. Now, this may be slightly controversial. I know there's a few rumours going around at the moment about Freida McFadden, which I'm not going to cover because that's not my thing to cover. But essentially, The Housemaid was the first book I heard of from Freida McFadden. She had other books out before this, don't get me wrong. This isn't the first book she ever wrote. This is the first book that most people heard her from, though. This is what blew her up in 2023, 2024. The Housemaid focuses on a housemaid who essentially goes and works for this family, and there's a very uncomfortable relationship with the housemaid, who is, I've forgotten what her name is, Nina, and the woman of the house, the wife, the partner, I can't quite remember what the relationship is, throughout the whole thing. Then there's a twist about halfway through that genuinely shocked me. Now, I'm hard to shock because you tell me there's a twist in a book, you tell me I'm reading a thriller, I'm thinking there's gonna be a twist at some point to kind of ramp this all up. I didn't get the twist, I didn't guess it. I think most people will these days because you've got to have seen something about it by now, but I got onto it a little bit early, so I hadn't yet heard about the twist. So that's the shock in this book. I was shocked by, one, how impressive the twist was, how it got me, how I was like, wow, I was not expecting that. And everybody that subsequently read it has then gone on and said, yeah, that also did shock me. There's an element of it of how well Freida McFadden writes the characters, how convincingly she writes them, I think is probably a better way of saying that enables the twist to be so good. And then the second thing that shocked me was just how impressed I was with it overall as a book. Now, thrillers generally don't blow my mind. If you saw my last video where I did 6 books that shocked me, you'll see that I did put Elisa Jewell in there, and that again was because I have a certain expectation with thrillers that they're easy, there might be a bit of a twist, they're kind of quick chapters, fun to read, but they're never going to be in my books of the year because they're never mind-blowing. There's nothing that ever steps them above that kind of easy read level, as it were. This and None of This Is True by Elisa Jewell both did that, just with small elements, small different things. Here it was the twist and how impressive the characters were, how immersed I felt, how uncomfortable I felt with some of the relationships between people, how it really gripped me. And maybe it's because it was my first Freida McFadden. Having now read like 7 or 8 other Freida McFadden books, definitely a theme. She definitely has certain character tropes and certain things that you can expect from her books. This was my first one from her, and therefore I was just really impressed when everything kind of came together, the twists were happening, all of this sort of stuff. So that's why The Housemaid by Freida McFadden is on this list. It just shocked me both with the actual twist and shocked me with how impressed I was by it. Some people say it's not a great, well-written book, but I think what I like about Freida McFadden's books is that, yes, you're not reading Shakespeare, you're not reading Ernest Hemingway, but what you are reading is a book that just gets to the point. It's focused purely on speeding you through a plot, and that's exactly what The Housemaid does brilliantly. And last, but by no means least, is Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. Now, this is a book that shocked me for multiple reasons. The biggest one, I think, is again the hype factor. My biggest fear whenever I see a book kind of doing the rounds on social media or is top trending or something like that, and it's in a genre that I am not comfortable reading or I've never read before, I get a little bit nervous because I'm like, is it overhyped because different people to my interests are reading it? Is it a younger audience? Is it a very predominantly female audience? Is it people that are into a completely different genre to me interested in it? And therefore I get nervous. However, Lessons in Chemistry is worth all the hype. Lessons in Chemistry not only has a fantastic front cover, but also in here you've got women empowerment, you've got a death that will shock you, you've got emotions, you've got a character who essentially is on the spectrum, and therefore you've got to better understand how they deal with human interactions. You've got somebody here who isn't afraid to kind of stand up for themselves. You've got a relationship in here that just breaks the mold of the times. This is set during the 1960s when women couldn't be powerful, when black people certainly couldn't be powerful, and what we have in this book is both of those things bloody happening, and it's wonderful. It's fantastic. It's empowering just as a human being, let alone if you're a woman or a woman of color, anything like that. It's such a fantastic read. There is an odd element in this book of the dog kind of has like a voice that you can read about, and I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it doesn't ruin the story. It just kind of adds a unique element to it, I guess, and you can ignore them and not have to worry about them too much. But it just shocked me with how good this book is. It ticked so many boxes for me. It made me feel warm, it made me feel fuzzy, it made me love Elizabeth Trott, it made me feel empowered, even though as a white male I have no relation to anyone in here. I just thought, yeah, you go. I love these sort of characters where you think people are standing up for themselves in a world where people have no right to put them down anymore, and it was just brilliant. Loved it. Absolutely fantastic. If you've not read Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus, I could not recommend it more. So that's the 5th and final book on this list. So those are my 5 books that shocked me with how good they are. Now, let me know down below if you've read any of these books. Let me know if there are any other books that you would put into this genre of shocked me with how good they are. You went in with low expectations, or you thought they might be overhyped and they didn't end up being. Let me know if any of those kind of things hit that filter for you. Until then, thank you for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe if you've not yet subscribed, go watch every other video I've ever produced for the rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.